Hello and welcome to the Everyday Adventure podcast. My name is Nikki Bass and I will be bringing you thoughts and ideas and hopefully some inspiration on how to build more adventure into your everyday life.
So I'm super excited today because I get to interview Kim Willis, who is the founder of the Heroine's Journey series, which is this wonderful project that I've had the privilege of being involved in on the fringes. But she basically brings together speakers, female speakers, all different backgrounds with lots of different stories who faced amazing challenges or gone off and set up their own projects and just done really interesting, inspiring things. Each event has been completely different and unique, and it's been a really wonderful way of hearing from lots of different people who I might not necessarily have heard from. And it's grown. I think it started a couple of years ago, back in 2018, and since has grown. The number of people who are involved is fantastic, and she's got plans to launch in New York later in the year. I think it's been slightly suffered as a result of the situation we're in, but hopefully taking it international later. Kim is a journalist and writer and strategist. She's done all sorts of amazing things, worked for the Cabinet Office. She's written travel articles for The Guardian. She's written for British Airways. And it's a real pleasure to welcome her to the programme. So welcome, Kim. Great to have you here.
Nikki. What a gorgeous introduction. I'm normally the one introducing people, so it's very strange to have a lovely introduction on me. It's very odd, but thank you.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. So I think one of the reasons I think we originally connected is because a few years ago you started to take up adventures of your own, really going out walking. You've been doing climbing, all sorts of really interesting things. So I'd really love to know what inspired you, whether you've always done adventures throughout your life, whether that's something that inspired you to get started, and I guess the journey that you've been on with that first.
Yeah, well, I would say that throughout my life, I've been a fairly adventurous person in that I've always enjoyed taking on new challenges. I'm someone who really thrives on the novelty of doing something new, but I would never have said up until, and even now, I would never say that I'm a classic adventurer or an adventurous person. I think maybe I have this idea of an adventurer being someone who's very physically fit. Physical fitness in particular seems to be a core thing in my head, which I do not have, and yeah, someone who's taking on climbing ridiculous crags across, I don't know, Snowdonia or something. I don't know. I have an image of kind of an unattainable adventure in my head, and I was definitely not that. But what I was a couple of years ago. I was just at a very difficult point in my life and was struggling with a number of areas of my life, and was just finding that whenever I went outside, whenever I went for a walk, particularly a longer walk in nature, out in the fresh air, that the problems that I was having would slip away and my mind would clear, and I would just always find myself feeling better for that experience. And so I think just the fact that I was finding the mental health benefits of getting out and going for a walk so beneficial, just naturally meant I started to increasingly grow the length of time I was spending doing that kind of thing. And so what started out as, going for a walk around my local park grew into, okay, well, maybe I can climb that mountain, or maybe I can do that multi-day trek. And so slowly but surely my comfort zone around adventure, I guess, typical adventure, started to grow. And yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing ever since. I love it. I love hiking. I love being in the outdoors. I love the mountains. And I've really sort of fallen more deeply in love with nature and adventure just by doing more of it.
That's amazing. And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because I think you've touched on a couple of things there that sort of act as real barriers for people sometimes getting started. Firstly, it's that sort of idea we have in our head about ourselves, and also about what that thing, that person should look like, whether it's an adventure. And I know whoever I've spoken to, whether it's running, triathletes, wild swimming, that sort of idea that there is a certain type of person who does this, and because I don't fit my own image of my head and what that should be, maybe I don't describe myself as that, but it's the activity that I really enjoy and I get something from. And I think then the other point you make about just taking really small steps, that you start the thing that is manageable, and that what motivates you to keep going is that you're getting the enjoyment from it, and naturally you progress almost without realizing it, without design. And that's really lovely. And then when people come to your journey later on, they go, wow, look at these incredible things you're doing. But you're like, but you don't know where I started. I was just walking down my road.
Yeah, absolutely. I had last year, I was doing a climbing Snowdon, actually. Oh, no, it wasn't Snowdon. It was up in the Lake District, climbing Helvellyn. And I put a post on Instagram saying, oh, we were thinking of maybe climbing Helvellyn tomorrow. Should we do it or not? And one of my friends, who's like a newer friend, commented, oh my God, Kim, I can't believe you do this every weekend. What, this is crazy. And it suddenly occurred to me that to her, I was like this adventurous-y person, which was just hilarious to me, because I really wasn't 2 years ago, really wasn't. I mean, I still now struggle to run a kilometre without keeling over, honestly. I'm not a kind of classically fit, active person. I go to a yoga class and I'm like, right, I think I'm going to opt out at this point.
This is good.
Yeah. But actually for me, something about walking really seems to suit my body, and it makes me wonder whether actually, all our bodies are very different, and maybe the kind of adventurous activity that works for one person would be very different to another person. I can't ever imagine doing a triathlon, but you could set me off hiking and I'll be happy for about 15 miles, so.
No, totally. Finding that thing that really resonates with you, and that I guess that also stops feeling like, although it's effort, doesn't feel like so much effort, because it's something you want, that you're in getting something from too. I think so important. So my next question really is about the heroine's journey, which I talked about right at the beginning, and which I know has been a huge adventure for you to embark on, having been there sort of at the start of it and having this wonderful idea and thinking, how's this going to turn out? I'd love to know, where did the idea come from?
So, well, as you described, the Heroine's Journey is this speaker series where we try to be a platform for the extraordinary stories of women. And the idea, I think, it came through a number of areas, but the core thing was that I was at a point in my life, at the time I was about 36, 37, where I found myself wondering about what the next step was going to be for me in my life. I'd achieved quite a lot in my career. I had crossed quite a few milestones, and I was looking forward at my life in the future and thinking, what is that going to be? And what I was finding was I was really struggling to find the stories of other women who were embarking on new challenges and new journeys at that point in their life in particular, and who were charting a path that might be slightly different from the kind of traditional idea of what a woman's life should be. And that became two things. Firstly, that became a real point of sadness for me, that I really found that the absence of role models and the absence of a more diverse idea about what a woman's life could be was for me personally really very difficult to get my head around. I found that it really contributed to a sense of my own feeling of just not knowing what to do next and not really knowing what my role was in the world. But it also really struck me that if I was feeling that way, probably I wouldn't be the only one. And that's usually always the case, when we feel like something is really not right and sad or frustrates us, then the chances are there are many other people who feel very similarly. And so one day I was with a friend, we were at an event, this guy was talking on stage and he was talking about his story, his journey, his like hero's journey, if you like. And the idea just came to me. I was like, well, I want to hear this story, but I want to hear it from a woman. I want to hear it from someone who looks like me. And so I came up with this idea. Originally it was called Women in Adventure, Women of Adventure, something like that. And then I really got much more into storytelling theory and practice, and this concept of the heroine's journey just kept coming up again and again. This idea that women's journeys through life are actually way more exciting and diverse than we ever often give them credit for, and why not create a platform for that? So it was really important to me that be a face-to-face platform, because I think the other thing that I was finding is I was feeling a loss of sisterhood. I think at that particular stage in life, everyone is so busy in their worlds and in their homes and with the many, many demands of living, that I was just missing being around other women and hanging out and having a chat and having a laugh. And I thought, well, you know, if we can bring these two things together, this platform for the extraordinary stories of women at the same time as just a place we can kind of get together and have a glass of wine and a laugh, I would love that, and there must be other people who would too. Yeah, that was the beginning.
Awesome. And I do think actually one of the things that you have successfully created is this sense of community amongst these incredible stories, which almost make you go, wow, that it's sort of so up there with what some of the people have achieved, but at the same time it feels so accessible. So I think that is truly extraordinary. What I'd like to know really is what two things at the same time, because maybe they're interrelated or maybe not, but firstly, what's been the biggest challenge you've encountered in setting the series up? And also, what's been the sort of unexpected benefit or pleasure or something that you've got out of it that you never anticipated or envisaged when it all first started?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that when you embark on anything like this, where you're creating it from scratch, there are challenges all the way along the line, and that's part of the journey and that's part of the joy of it. I would think that one of the biggest moments of challenge for me with it actually was at the point of launching it. At the point where I'd had the idea, I had come up with the venue, I'd got the speakers, I think you and I had spoken about it, and you know, I kind of felt like there was a bit of a head of steam around it, and it actually came to the point where I had to launch it and actually share it with the world. And I personally found that so hugely challenging for whatever reason. When this idea was just mine and it was private and it was something I only talked to a few people about, that felt very safe. And at the point where it came to, you know, launching the Instagram channel and putting the tickets out there and seeing if people liked it, felt incredibly vulnerable. Like it was a really exposing moment that I hadn't anticipated would be like that. Actually, I just thought I'd press go and people would buy the tickets and it would all be fine. Actually, what happened is I pressed go, no one bought a ticket for a few days, of course, because people didn't know about it yet. Yeah. And I just found myself feeling this really intense sense of vulnerability and almost shame, actually, that I had put so much of myself into this idea, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, what if it doesn't work? And I think that thought of, oh God, what will people think of the thing I'm doing? And what if it fails? Like those two questions, I think, are two of the biggest blockers on people making progress with a new idea. And in my case, I really had to sit myself down and once again ask myself, why am I doing this? Why is it important to me? And what's the one next action I can take that will keep me moving forwards? And that in those times where I'm really struggling or finding it very challenging, really simplifying and bringing it back to, don't try and change the world, just make one tiny step forwards. And that's how I get through those challenges. And so, to your point about, you know, high points, the proof that that strategy works, the fact that day after day there'd be another ticket sold and another ticket sold, and then I'd promote it a bit more and someone else would come on board, and just the fact that action gets results has been a hugely powerful lesson for me, because I think what it's taught me is not just, you know, beyond Heroine's journey, just in life, that if there's something I want to do, if there's a goal that seems quite big and scary, that if I just keep taking small steps towards it, I will start to get closer to it, even if it seems audacious initially. And I think that is, just as a life lesson, that's just really good to know, because that's how you get out of your comfort zone. So yeah, that would, I think, both the challenge and the benefit are, as tends to always be the case, you know, it's a two-sided coin, isn't it?
Yeah, so they're interlinked, and it is such a wonderful lesson. I think just that thing about the process as much as anything. I think what struck me is actually that story about the process of getting started is something that comes through so much in the stories that get told at your speaker series events as well. That often when people are talking about these amazing things they've achieved, the interesting part is the story of actually how they've just put one foot in front of the other and had to at some level trust that they're moving forward, even if they couldn't see the shape of where that was going, holding on to an idea and like you said, but the real practical thing of actually all I need to do is take an extra step.
So I think that's it's so interesting, isn't it? Because we hear about these stories at the end of them when all the success has been achieved, and it's like, as you said, it can sometimes seem a bit intimidating almost. Oh my God, this person did this amazing thing. And yet when you hear the real story of how it happened, normally there's a good, months, years at the beginning where everything was not working and it was actually all very difficult, but all they had to do was just keep taking steps forward. And that's where success comes from. It's just perseverance sometimes.
Totally. But the story is somewhere in the mess as well. Actually, it's the wiggly lines and the detours and the bits that you didn't expect to the bit that in a way ends up to be sometimes the most interesting part of the journey. So you've touched on it there anyway, but I'm just wondering if you had one piece of advice then. So somebody has an idea and they want to get started with it and they're sort of feeling overwhelmed, not really sure where to start. What piece of advice would you give them?
Oh, it's a really good question. I think if you're someone who has an inkling already of the thing you want to do or the adventure you'd like to take on or the idea you'd like to bring to fruition, I think my advice would be, well, first of all, it would be to say that in and of itself is really significant. If you've come up with an idea or you long for a particular type of adventure, that's not nothing. Like, that in itself is really something to be proud of and to celebrate, and usually will speak to something really important about you. And so I think sometimes it's very easy to think, oh, everyone's had this idea before, everyone's done this thing before, I'm not the first to it, or we easily talk ourselves out of the ideas that come to us. And I think my big bit of advice would be to say, just don't let that happen. If you've come to a thought or come to an idea that has brought joy to you in some way or has made you a little bit excited or a little bit kind of even nervous, that's also good. To honor that, actually, and to not allow yourself to push it away because for whatever litany of reasons you might do that. But protect that in the first instance. And I think, and then the second thing is just, what's the one smallest step you can take in the direction of that idea? What's the one thing you can do today that would be easy for you to do, that would move you towards it? And that might be, if it's a hike you want to do, for instance, that might just be as simple as looking up the destination on a map. It can be really small, or it might just be telling one other person. But our actions, our ultimate successes are made up of these tiny actions. And so even if you just do one tiny thing, that's moving you closer to making it a reality.
I love that. Yeah, it is. It's that. What's the smallest step you can do? Absolutely. And I think you touched on a really important point there as well, is that often the person who's most likely to stop us from something happening is ourselves, and that trying to manage that voice in your head that's sort of expressing totally normal fears and anxieties and things that we all experience. I don't know if it's Elizabeth Gill, but somebody said something about allowing fear along for the ride but not letting it take the steering wheel. I love that analogy because it's about, okay, acknowledging that there's a reason why it's there, but actually if you've got a reason to do it or there's something you really want to do, not letting yourself talk yourself out of it is really important. Thank you so much, Kim. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us today. If people want to find out more about you or the Heroine's Journey, where can they go to find it?
So our website is heroinesjourney.co, and you can find us on Instagram as well, Heroine's Journey with an underscore after it. And if you want to connect with me, I'm on Instagram every day, as so many of us are, at underscore Kim Willis. And I'd love to hear from you if any of this has resonated. We love to grow the community, so it would be fantastic.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kim. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, and take care. Speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
So I really hope you enjoyed that interview with Kim. For me, there were two real standout points that she made. I think the first around actually how we get ourselves to taking that first step, and that can be a really tiny thing, and it might feel insignificant in a way to us, but actually that any sort of process or achievement is made up of those very tiny small steps accumulating, really. But also that point you made about the inner critic and the inner voice, that voice that doubts what we're doing, is this okay, and questions us and questions our ideas, and something about acknowledging that voice, allowing it to sit alongside us, but that we can give it more power than it actually deserves. And that actually it's completely normal that everybody experiences those voices, or the majority of us do anyway, when we're trying something new. And that's part of pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone and discovering that we can try new things as well. And who knows where it might lead. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you back here again really soon. Bye.